Without the social safety net of Social Security, it is estimated by my friends at the Pew Research Center that 4 in 10 seniors would have incomes below the federal poverty line. Furthermore, it is estimated by the Office of the Budget and Policy Initiatives that Social Security benefits are indeed much more modest than people realize. The average Social Security retirement benefit as of February of 2024 was $1,862 a month, which is the equivalent of $22,344 a year. To put this into context, with someone with average earnings who retired in 2024, at the age of 65, Social Security benefits were responsible for replacing approximately 39% of their past earned income. The replacement rate of income by Social Security fell gradually between 2000 and 2022, when the retirement age for Social Security benefits rose from 65 to 67. For my friend Nancy Cavey, she is a Social Security long-term and short-term disability attorney. She's got over 39 years of experience in the complex field of disability law. Filing for disability can certainly be a confusing and life-changing event. That's precisely why you need an experienced hand like Nancy to guide you through this process to ultimately garner a favorable result. Her firm, the law office of Nancy L. Cavey, has extensive experience in trying disability cases. And she's also helped clients with complex medical conditions such as heart disease, hypertension, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, spinal injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And traumatic brain injuries receive the disability benefits they're entitled to. Cavey has a personal connection to this work dating back to her teenage years when her father was diagnosed with leukemia. And she joined me this week to talk about her personal connection, her life's work in promoting inclusion in the law and helping those with disabilities get the necessary benefits and live a high-quality life they deserve. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, my friend, I'll take a moment, Nancy, to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to dive into your career, helping people get what they're entitled to in the legal profession. It's great to see you, and happy Wednesday morning to you, my friend.
All right. Good morning. Good morning.
Absolutely. So, Nancy, you know that I wanted to start our conversation by asking you about your personal connection to the work that you do, because I know that your father was diagnosed with leukemia when you were a teenager, and it sort of sparked the work that you do today, my friend. So I'm wondering if we can start by asking you about your personal connection to the work that you do today, my friend.
So my dad was a World War II naval aviator in the Pacific. So he was a John Wayne type of guy. He came back after the war, went to college on the GI Bill, and joined the family insurance business in Baltimore, Maryland. And he had the foresight to purchase a disability insurance policy. And when I was in junior high school, he was diagnosed with having leukemia. So I watched him make that difficult decision from me being in junior high school until the day I graduated from high school. In that time frame, he continued to work, but finally realized that he couldn't, and that his health was more important than continuing to work. So he made the difficult decision to stop work, apply for his his disability insurance benefits, and then also apply for Social Security disability benefits. So I've been in a family where the breadwinner has become disabled, resulting in a change in our lifestyle, us moving from Maryland to Florida, finding new doctors, and watching my mom and dad wait every month at the mailbox to see whether not only the Social Security disability payment was going to come, but whether the disability insurance payments were going to come, because obviously that's what we were going to be living on with a family of five. So that's my connection. And that's why I decided that I wanted to be a disability insurance attorney, helping people get their disability insurance benefits, but also help people get their Social Security disability benefits. So for me, it's become a personal motivation to do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, an anti-filing for disability can be sort of an onerous or a life-changing process, and it can often be confusing. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about what you think people need to know about filing for their disability benefits in order to get a favorable outcome. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So, if you're applying for Social Security disability benefits, I think that before you stop work and apply for benefits, you need to make sure that you have the support of your doctor, because if you don't, then quite frankly, you need to start treating with other doctors. When you apply for Social Security disability benefits, you can only go 1 year backwards, if you will. So if you stopped working, for example, in January of 2026, but you had really some issues and were really unable to work, reduced wages, potentially we would go back 1 year. So I think the other thing that people need to understand is that there is only a period of time that you will be able to go backwards in terms of getting what's called back benefits. And so once you know you're unable to work, you need to apply for your benefits, hopefully with the support of your physician, and then understand that the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be for you in terms of getting back benefits, because you can be giving up back benefits by not timely filing. And that leads us to the third point, and that is, at least here in the United States, when you work, you become insured by contributing to the Social Security system with withholdings from our paycheck called FICAs. Normally, you have to work 20 out of the last 40 quarters or 5 out of the last 10 years to become insured. But when you stop work and you're not contributing, you ultimately can lose that insured status. So if you wait too long, you are going to lose your ability to apply for Social Security disability benefits. So those are my three general thoughts about, doing things right and doing things timely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the U.S. government reported last year that if 4 in 10 seniors wouldn't have their Social Security benefits, my friend, they would go below the basic federal poverty line. So, I wonder your perspective on how important it is for seniors to get those Social Security benefits, and what do you want people to know about the importance of the Social Security system? Because in some instances in the states, it's really gone under a bit of an unfortunate sort of perception over the last couple of years. So what are your thoughts on what do you think the average person needs to know about the importance of Social Security benefits, my friend?
Well, let's talk about the two different types of disability, Social Security benefits, if you will. There is Social Security disability benefits, and you can get those benefits. And I'm not going to talk about children's Social Security benefits, but you can apply for Social Security disability benefits basically. When you're 18, as an adult, if you will, if you're not on your, if you don't already have a children's claim. So it doesn't matter. You could be as young as 18, and you can be basically as old as 65, if you will. And so when I am counseling people who are closely approaching, retirement age, early retirement age 62, 65, 67, the first thing I say to them is, look, go on to www.ssa.gov and look at your account to see how much you would get in Social Security disability benefits versus Social Security retirement benefits. And if you're at 62, I generally don't recommend that people take the early retirement benefits, but if they're disabled, apply for their Social Security disability benefits. And the reason is this: if you take early retirement benefits, potentially there is a 25% reduction in your Social Security retirement benefits, even if you're not found to be disabled. And so you're basically, depending on your financial circumstances, really reducing your total Social Security retirement payout. Now, in those situations, we have a client who's disabled, and we've got that application pending, and they're approaching age 62, and they say to me, "Hey, I can't wait. I need this money. I'm waiting for the Social Security decision." Then I will say to them, "Go ahead and apply, but remember, we have to prove that you are disabled for disability purposes as of the day you file early retirement." So to answer your question, each case is really unique, and that's something that I try to talk my clients through, depending on their the status of their medical records, the strength of their disability claim, their financial needs, and whether it might be in their best interest to file for Social Security disability first, and then apply for your early retirement benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. So, building on what you just said, I'm wondering the questions or the scenarios that you go through with your clients if they're debating retirement versus continuing to work. What sort of questions do you think people should ask themselves if they're debating retirement versus still working, my friend? From a legal perspective, what questions should they ask themselves?
Well, I think first they need to ask some practical questions, and that is, when you stop work, and your employer is providing you your group health insurance, you are going to have to what's called COBRA your insurance. So you're basically now paying for the premium, and the premium is normally higher when you are switching from your employer's group policy to your individual policy. So my first question always is, where is your group health insurance going to be coming from? Because you need medical treatment to win your Social Security case, and you need medical treatment for your medical condition. And similarly, when someone is retiring, I'm asking kind of the same question, and that is, what are you going to be doing for group insurance? Because under the Social Security disability system, you have to, if your benefits are granted, you have a 5-month waiting period and then 24 months of benefits before you become eligible for Medicare. So even in the best scenarios, you're going to have to wait 29 months to get your eligibility for Medicare. So where are you going to get insurance, group health insurance, in that gap? So for me, I think that's really the number one question we need to answer as a practical matter in making the decision if and when to terminate your employment and apply for benefits. Now, there are times when, in the Social Security disability system, you can work and earn money, and that's called SGA. This year, basically, it's $1,650. If you earn more than $1,650 a month, you're not eligible for your Social Security disability benefits. So the question then becomes, can you maintain your group insurance and continue to work part-time? And that's a question that I say, look, you got to go talk to your employer about. So for me, it's really the group health insurance issues that are key to get addressed first before we start talking about the actual Social Security disability 5-step sequential evaluation process and the claims process. I want that issue resolved first before we move on to the question of how we're going to apply for and win the Social Security disability claim.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm curious because you've been at this for more than 3 decades, and you've seen how the Social Security system has evolved over time and how much people rely on it. And I'm curious to ask you about the changes you would make to the system to make it easier and to make it sustainable too, because it's money that people pay in the end when they retire. So I'm curious, when you look at the state of the Social Security system, what do you like from a legal and personal perspective, and what would you change, my friend?
So in the context of the Social Security disability system, I would say to you first and foremost that our unfortunate budget cuts has resulted in a 25% reduction in staffing, and Social Security has never really been adequately funded to begin with. So that has resulted in, at least here in the Florida area, it takes a year to a year and a half before an initial application is actually reviewed by a claims examiner. And so the first thing I have to tell my clients is you're going to have to find a source of income to deal with at least a year and a half delay. And if your case is denied, probably another year. So my response would be first, to increase the budget so that there are appropriate funds for staffing. Number two, increase the staffing. Number three, in terms of the claims process, we have an initial application, a request for reconsideration, and a request for hearing. To me, that second stage, the request for reconsideration, is a waste of time, and that step should be eliminated. And then I think that there should be greater education of the public of how you go about applying for at least Social Security disability benefits, because there's a lot of confusion and misinformation and dismay when they find out the steps that have to be taken and the delay. Quite frankly, I don't buy the studies that say that Social Security fund is going to become insolvent. There are ways in which that alleged insolvency issue can be addressed, and part of that does involve increased payroll taxes. But quite frankly, in my view, I think the measure of a society is how it treats its disabled citizens. That's sort of a combination of Franklin Roosevelt and Hubert Humphrey's thoughts about that process. But if I, as an employer, have to pay an increase in the payroll taxes to fund, to help fund, if you will, the Social Security system, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And naturally, I'm curious to ask you about your firm because I know that there are some unique characteristics that set your firm apart, my friend. So tell me all about it and why you love what you do, my friend.
Well, I think you can hear, Kevin, the passion in my voice. I have an associate whose mother has MS and is disabled. So we have family members who are disabled, and we see what happens in the disability claims process internally in terms of a family. So we bring, I think, a unique perspective to disability insurance and Social Security disability litigation because we've been where our clients have been. Secondly, I think education is crucial. So as you know, not only do I have 2 podcasts that deal with disability issues, but I post a video a day on YouTube about disability topics, ranging from medical conditions to how you prove your case. And I have guests that will talk about this process. I'm trying to not only educate our prospective clients, but to give them a sense of comfort and peace that they have an understanding of the process. And I think the third thing we pride ourselves on is communication. in the course of handling these cases, we do a lot of videos that we send out to our clients at different stages of the case to explain what's going on. And we use technology in the form of both AI and video, if you will, to prepare our clients if we have to go to a hearing. So I have videos on what a hearing looks like. I have videos on preparation. And then we actually have in-person conferences, either by in person or by video or by phone, where we're teaching our clients how to present a winning case to a judge. So I think that was the fourth thing. The fifth thing is going to be this team approach that we take. There are some firms who unfortunately deal just with paralegals and never talk to the attorney or meet the attorney the morning of the hearing. I think that's absolutely inappropriate, and I want my clients to be actively involved in their claims, understand what it is we need to prove, and share that common goal in proving what we have to prove to win the case.
Yeah, because it's important. I always say it's important for everyone to be invested in the same sort of boat so that they can be invested in the outcome. That's important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so the other thing that we do is I've written books on long-term disability. I've written books on Social Security. I've written books based on different diseases, long COVID, MS, POTS, that are available to the public. And so it's just not my clients that I want to educate. I want to be able to educate the greater community about the process and their unique medical conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just because I'm personally curious, because I talk to organizations all the time about the importance of hiring people with disabilities. And as you know, I was born with cerebral palsy myself, and I've dedicated my adult life to advocating for the employment of people with disabilities. So I'm curious, from a personal and professional standpoint, what do you believe is the competitive advantage that organizations can add to their culture when they hire folks with disabilities? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, let me give you a legal answer, then I'll give you a personal answer. If you have applied for and are getting Social Security disability benefits, Social Security has a return to work program called Ticket to Work, and there are very strict criteria. And so people can work and collect Social Security disability benefits. So I never want my clients or anyone in the public to think that getting Social Security disability benefits is a death sentence, if you will, for unemployment. So I think that is particularly important. Now, here in the United States, we have the ADA, which is a federal law that requires the assistance, if you will, in hiring and keeping those who meet the ADA standards. But I also think, again, this is a bit of a cultural issue. We have employers here in Florida like Publix who are well known for employing people who have physical, cognitive, and mental challenges. And so it's always, I try to shop there just because I know that they support the disabled in the community and are willing to employ them. And then, there are other businesses that I see who will also make accommodations. I actually once walked into a business and there was one of my former clients who I had represented working, and he had a below the knee amputation, and the employer was allowing him to use a stool. And it was like, I gave him a big hug. The supervisor came over, we hugged and we talked. And so I think those organizations that have a culture of inclusiveness are certainly to be admired, and I think to be emulated by other employers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's, I'm fascinated to ask you this question because, when Andrew Yang was running for president, he talked about a universal basic income. And I know here in Canada, we have something with the province where I live called the Ontario Disability Support Program. And if you make a certain amount of money, you are cut off of the medical and financial benefits you receive from the government. So I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think there's an avenue or a need to look into giving people with disabilities a universal, a basic income? And as you said, what is the key to making sure that people know that if they work, that they won't be cut off of the medical benefits that they rely on from the government? So it's a kind of a two-part question that you can take in any direction you like, my friend.
Sure. I know that there are 18 states in the United States where there is some sort of basic income studies that are being done, and this is across the population, not just for those who are disabled. I don't know that I have a really well thought out answer to that question. I think one of the strengths of the Social Security disability system is the ability to allow people who are disabled under the Social Security system to work pursuant to the Ticket to Work program. And that's one of the, quite frankly, the few things I really like about the Social Security disability system, is that it encourages people to work and does not penalize them for engaging in competitive employment and earning a livelihood that's above the basic poverty level. So I think that is very important in the context of Social Security disability. There are people who are not eligible for certain programs based on income, and I truly believe that people find value in work, and that they should not be penalized for that. So I would like to see more state involvement in creating employment opportunities for those who are disabled, but who may not qualify for SSI benefits or disability benefits. And so I would like to see incentives for employers given to hire people who have disabilities, because I'm not necessarily a fan of a basic income, if you will. I'm more of a fan of, if you can work and you have an employer who will work with you, that people find dignity in working. And that goes back to my father, who struggled with I'm a breadwinner. I want to provide for my family. My identity is who I am. And so my answer to your question is really colored, if you will, by my personal background. For those who cannot work, whose disabilities are, so severe, then I think that's a different issue. And by that I mean, here in the United States, what you get in Social Security disability benefits is a product of your earnings, and Social Security will look at what it is you've earned. And if you aren't eligible for Social Security disability and you're eligible for what's called SSI, which is an asset-based test, that's crazy, because the asset in the United States for SSI benefits is $2,000 in terms of assets for an individual, and they get $914 per month. And if you're a couple, the limit's $2,000 in assets. So, and the max benefit is $1,371 per month. So I have a lot of cases where the person is no longer insured, but one of the members of this marriage or partnership is earning a lot of money, and the one who is disabled is not eligible because of the spouse's or partner's earnings. So I think that another legislative solution is to raise the asset levels for those who are eligible for SSI, because quite frankly, those are ridiculous. And I also think $914 a month is ridiculous. You can't pay rent. You can't, put food on the table. You can't deal with the basic necessities of life with that low payment. So legislatively, at least as it relates to SSI, I would like to see federal legislation that changes those asset limits and also changes the amount of money that the person would be payable on a monthly basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one final question on the employment of people with disabilities before I move on, because I always tell organizations and leaders of organizations that there's no 50% off policy when you have a disability, right? It's not like you can take it back to the mall or a convenience store once you're diagnosed with a disability. And I'm wondering your thoughts on how we change attitudinal barriers for employers when they look at the hiring process when they hire people with disabilities. What are your thoughts there?
Well, in this current political environment, I quite frankly don't see anything happening because of the worldview of people who are disabled and the worldview of other people, including minorities. So I'm not wildly optimistic that much is going to change in the next 3 years. But I really think that if you want to make this work, you really have to give financial incentives to employers to help people who are disabled find a job and keep a job. I also think that the AI is going to challenge work, regardless of where you are in the United States. And it will potentially make jobs that people who are disabled tend to be able to do perhaps easier. But then the question becomes, how is AI going to impact the numbers of those jobs? So I think that we have to address the economic reality of incentivizing employers, but then also kind of determine what the impact of AI is going to be on the applicability or openings of employment for people who have problems. So, for example, I represent people who have back conditions, and they're limited in their ability to sit and stand, and they have to alternate sitting and standing. And many of them try to hide their disability while they're working remotely from home because they don't want their employer to know that they're off task. And so that use of technology in some instances can work against them and can work for them. So I think this is really an area where we need some future study as to what's the impact of AI going to be on the community at large, and specifically certain segments of the population who may need special adaptations or limit or accommodations that still result in them being a productive employee.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you touched on this earlier, but I wanted to dive back into the importance of the clients you work with, or anyone for that matter, really developing a basic understanding of the law and their cases in general, because it's important for your clients to also advocate for themselves, because if they're invested in the process, as we mentioned earlier, everyone is sort of in the same territory when it comes to sort of seeking the same outcome. So I'm curious, why is it so important about clients and individuals developing an understanding of not only their case but the law surrounding disability rights, so that they can become their own best self-advocate? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, this is going to be a bit of a long answer, but this is what I explain to my clients in an initial phone call. I explain to them the 5-step sequential evaluation test that's used in every case. And the most important steps are steps 4 and 5. And at step 4, the issue is, can you go back to the lightest job you did physically, cognitively, and emotionally in the 5 years before your claim is decided? Now, that's very easy, I think, to prove. Where these cases are really won and lost is step 5. And I call this the crazy cockamamie, not real world test. And the test is there other work in the mythical, hypothetical, not real world, national U.S. economy that you wouldn't want to do, that does not pay a living wage in view of your age, your education, the skills you've learned in past work, and whatever your restrictions and limitations are. So in English, what that means is Social Security will many times say that a person could be a surveillance system monitor, monitoring a computer. If somebody breaks in, call 911. Or doing stupid jobs like sorting nuts and bolts or addressing envelopes all day. I want my clients to understand that what they basically have to prove at step 5 is that they can't do a job sitting down all day with bilateral manual dexterity, meeting the pace, production, and attendance requirements. And so, Kevin, I tell my clients, prospective clients in this initial phone call, I want you to change the way you are explaining to the doctor your symptoms. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to get out a piece of paper and I want you to write this formula down. And I want you to do this for every one of your medical conditions. So write the word symptoms, write down the word location of symptoms, what is the duration of those symptoms, what is the frequency of those symptoms, what's the intensity of those symptoms, and give me an example. And I want you to write that down. So let me give you an example. It might be that this person has back pain. So back pain, but the pain runs down their leg on their right leg to their big toe. So they've got back pain, numbness, tingling, and probably spasm. So I ask my clients to say, okay, well, for each one of these symptoms, talk about where it is, how long it lasts, how does it impact your ability to function, particularly if you have good days and bad days, and give me an example. So it might be that this hypothetical individual can only sit for 45 minutes and then they have to get up and move around. They might be on the floor. They might be in a recliner. They might have to elevate their legs. This is 24/7. They can't stand in front of the kitchen sink for more than 10 or 15 minutes, and they can't sit down for 45 minutes, and they might be using a TENS unit or using an ice pack on their back. So we want to be able to tell the story of their symptoms and how their symptoms impact their ability to function, because Social Security is looking for that story in the medical records. Because ultimately we want doctors to fill out some forms called residual functional capacity forms. Social Security will never tell them about these forms. And we want this all to be consistent. Social Security can read the records and see the diagnostic studies, the MRI, the CT scans, the EMGs, whatever, but they want to understand the story of why a person can't do their past work or other work in the national economy. So I want my clients to understand, what do we have to prove? Can't do a sedentary job. How are we going to go about proving it? Well, that's going to be the story, the truthful story you tell of symptoms and functionality, and you're going to give that to the doctor at every visit and ask them to make it a part of their medical chart. So it's involving your client in understanding what they have to prove, but then help them be their own storyteller of how their symptoms impact their ability to function. And of course, my job is ultimately to bring it all together, to tell it in a winning fashion that allows the Social Security Administration to award benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And Natchez, you mentioned you host 2 podcasts, my friend, and I wanted to give you the space and a platform to tell me about the mission behind both of them and what you hope listeners and watchers get from them, my friend.
Well, thank you. I have 2 podcasts. Winning Isn't Easy, Disability Insurance Benefits. Winning Isn't Easy, Social Security Disability Benefits. The first podcast we've been doing now for, I think, almost 5 years. The second Social Security Disability podcast that I mentioned, we are just celebrating our first year anniversary. And the goal, of course, again, is to educate people so that they understand the complexities of the system, these systems, if you will, the pitfalls, understand what they have to prove, and then understand why potentially they need to have a lawyer, because these are not complex I'm sorry, these are complex claims that require a lot of thought, coordination. And if you're in pain or you're having concentration issues or psychological issues, you don't really understand or have the time to understand what it is you need to prove. And you should be concentrating on your medical condition while you have a lawyer, an experienced lawyer, concentrate on the legal aspects of your claim.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nat, I want to ask you this two-part question about the word and concept of inclusion. How do you think inclusion for folks with disabilities has evolved over the years? And what do you think it will take to break down the societal barriers that people with disabilities face every day, my friend?
I think that people who don't, I think people are looking for people like themselves. And if a person is different, unfortunately, in today's environment, you're suspect. I think that has unfortunately gotten worse. But I think the goal of humanity, every person should be to see every person as an equal. They may not have equal abilities or aptitudes, but they are human, and they should be treated as human, not as invisible, not as not to be ignored or degraded, or to be thought of as second or third class people. And so I think a lot of this comes back to morality and really seeing people as people, not as someone different than yourself.
Yeah, and just your thoughts on the evolution or the changing definition of the word inclusion itself. What do you think, in terms of a perception or just as a conceptual manner, the word inclusion has gone on to the last couple of years, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, they're not happy thoughts, quite frankly. I think in the current political environment in the United States, there is a us against, there's been a pitting of Americans against Americans of all races, ages, sexual orientation, which has been, quite frankly, very disheartening. Um, I think that there was a lot of advances under the Obama administration and the Biden administration for inclusion of people people, where in the current political environment we're dealing with exclusion, division, um, and discrimination. So again, I certainly am not happy with what is happening here in the United States, um, and I'm hoping that will change. But at the end of the day, I think that people have to really look at their own souls, look at their own you know, moral beliefs and values, and act accordingly. And I think that unfortunately, this is going to be an individual effort and not certainly a government effort at this particular juncture in American history.
Yeah, sadly, I think you're correct about that. And in the next 3.5 years, it's going to be an unfortunate state of affairs for people with disabilities. But let's end on a positive note. And I want your thoughts on what gives you the most hope for people with disabilities in their full integration in societal life going forward, and how do you think it contributes to your own personal and professional legacy, my friend, and how do you want that to be defined?
So, as I said, having grown up with a father who was a John Wayne um, man who found great value in his role as a father and as the support of the family, I think that people should take strength from who they are and what they do. But at some point, if you become disabled, there is going to be the inevitable change in your role, be it you're not necessarily a provider anymore, but you are still a valued person, not only in society, but in the role in your family. And so I think that's one of the themes of our practice, is that we want to recognize our clients for what they were in terms of their occupation and the skills they've learned and the contribution that they made to society, but that contribution may have changed, and now there's a really a concentration or a focus on your family, because you are a valued member not only of society, but you are just as valuable to your family members and the role that you play in your family. So I want my clients and our listeners here to understand that work is not necessarily the measure of a person's value. It is who they are. It is the principles and values that they live by, the examples that they set, and the love that they share with their community and with their family.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nancy, if I want to tell me if people want to get connected with yourself personally, or the podcast, or your law firm, my friend, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, if they want to call our office for a consultation, they can call 727-894-3188. We will do a screening interview to see if we can help them, and if not, we will refer them out. We have I think, a very vibrant website, which is Cavey, Cavey, law.com. And I think that there's contact forms on our website, but also I would encourage them just to watch the YouTube videos and the podcasts, so that they have a sense of comfort that there are answers. They may not like the answers, but there are answers, and there are a path forward for the folks that we can help. And if we can't help them, then certainly we will refer them to people we think might be able to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nancy, I want to thank you for the privilege of engaging in conversation with you this morning, and for your commitment to furthering the definition of inclusion for folks with disabilities. And I want to thank you for giving them access to the benefits they rightly deserve. My friend, it was a great pleasure of mine to engage in conversation with you this morning, and I want to thank you for being here, my friend.
Well, thank you, and I've enjoyed this conversation, and I love your podcast, and I would certainly urge your listeners to tell all their family and friends about your podcast and to subscribe to your podcast.